Hey, what's up everyone? Today is Thursday, July 23rd, and it's 27 degrees Celsius, which is 81 in Fahrenheit. I'm currently walking west on Queen Street. However, right here is where Queen and King Street splinter off. So on the right, that's Queen Street East, heading west towards downtown. And on the left, this is the start of King Street East. So the plan for this walk is to head west along all of King Street East to Yonge Street, where I'll jump into King Station. The entire walk should be somewhere around 2 kilometers. That bridge I just came off of was or still is, the Queen Street Viaduct. That was built back in 1912, and it runs over the Don Valley Parkway and the Don River. So just here on the left is what's known as the Canary District. A lot of these residences were initially built as part of the athlete village for the 2015 Pan Am Games, which Toronto hosted. They've since built more condos in the area, as well as added a YMCA, student housing for George Brown College, as well as some public housing units. That was Lower River Street, which I just passed through. You could take that north up to the Cabbagetown area. It's a lot sunnier now than when I left my place. I don't normally walk west at this time of day into the sun, as it's not the ideal lighting conditions for these videos. But when I left, the sun was covered in clouds, and I didn't think the sky would open up like this. That was only about half an hour or so ago. So these streetcars on King Street are serviced by the 504A and the 504B streetcars. The 504A starts at Dundas West Station, which is just to the north of Roncesvalles Village. And that'll take you all the way across King Street, up onto Queen Street, where we started this walk. And then it'll turn north at Broadview Avenue and head up to Broadview Station. There's also the 504B, which starts at Dufferin Gate and the Exhibition Place and comes just up here to Sumac Street, where on the left there is a loop where the streetcar will turn around and head back in the other direction. That's known as the Distillery Loop, as just to the left here is the Distillery District. This neighborhood is known as Corktown, named after a county in Ireland where a lot of the early settlers to this neighborhood were originally from. There you can see the streetcar tracks heading down to the loop. And to get away from the sun, it looks to be a bit more shaded on the other side of the street. So let's cross over and see how things look. This underpass here takes us under Richmond Street and Adelaide Street, which are two one-way streets which run east and west through downtown. They're both parallel streets, or one-way streets that run parallel to King Street. There's the 504A streetcar. There's some interesting art as part of this underpass. I think this went up in 2014 as part of a city street art program to discourage graffiti and encourage more art throughout the city. Just around the corner from here is Underpass Park, where you can see a whole lot more of this kind of art. There's often skateboarders and a whole lot of people hanging around in that area. The city is still in stage 2, so all the bars and cafes are limited to outdoor dining only, so you will see a lot of these sidewalk patios pop up. And if I'm not mistaken, this is Sackville Park, or Sackville Playground. The last time I came through here, it was closed, or at least the playground area was closed off. So it's good to see that that's back open and the kids can enjoy it. While I was on my way down to this area, I pulled up Google and I just looked up historic buildings along King Street East, and I was directed to a list of all the historical buildings in the city of Toronto. And I decided just to do a find, and I typed in King Street East, or if you're on a computer, you just Control F. And there are over 80 buildings popping up just on this short little 2-kilometer stretch we're walking. So I have no doubt we're walking right by all kinds of history and not even realizing it. Just up here on the left should be, I think it's called the Little Trinity Anglican Church, and it has the distinction of being Toronto's oldest serving church. It opened sometime in the 1840s. It's certainly not one of the grander or more impressive looking churches in the city, but it is the oldest. I think St. James Cathedral, which we'll be passing by later, probably has the distinction of being the city's most well-known church property. So pretty much everywhere you look, you see heritage buildings on this street. Just up ahead used to be sort of the central business district in Toronto. There was someone following a bit uncomfortably close behind me, so I just let him go around. So this here is Parliament Street we're approaching, where Corktown comes to an end.
King to Dufferin Gate.
You could turn left, which is south on Parliament, and take that down to the lake. Or you could turn right and take this all the way up through Cabbagetown and to Bloor Street east. And just straight ahead there on the left is the Distillery District. Which is usually one of the more popular summertime tourist spots in the city of Toronto. And this big glass building straight ahead is occupied by the Globe and Mail newspaper. And just to the west of it is the former Toronto Sun headquarters, which is another newspaper in Toronto, although the word newspaper you could use lightly to describe it. I'm mistaken, it still says Corktown here on Berkeley Street, so I guess it extends a bit further than I had thought. We're about to head through the George Brown campus area, at least the King Street campus. They have another campus down on Queen's Quay, right on the waterfront. And then there's a campus up by Casa Loma, just to the north of downtown in the Annex neighborhood. I think the campus here, I'm trying to think of what kind of courses they have. I think it's where their business classes are. That's one of the buildings used by the George Brown St. James campus. It's also the rear end of the old Toronto Sun building. On the other side of this, there is a No Frills supermarket, an LCBO, and I think a Dollarama. And just coming up is one of my favorite bars in the city of Toronto. It's called Betty's. I think I've pointed it out in a few videos before. Fun fact, it used to be called the Betty Ford Clinic, which is a drug rehabilitation center in the US. And apparently they don't have much of a sense of humor, as they are asked to stop using that name or face legal consequences. So they had to change their name from the Betty Ford to just Betty's. They do have a pretty large patio out back, so I would imagine that's open right now. It looks like they have a few tables set up on the sidewalk as well. I'm not sure if I'd be super comfortable just drinking on the sidewalk, so close to all the pedestrians right now.
Buy some more at the convenience stores and no restaurant, nothing.
I think I was able to peek in and see that the patio was open. So this here is Sherbourne Street I'm approaching. And just to the north of here is the intersection of Queen and Sherbourne, one of the city's more notorious and well-known intersections. Sherbourne Street does have dedicated bike lanes. So straight ahead are some more buildings as part of the George Brown St. James campus. We're entering what used to be Toronto's main business district. That would be just up here on where Jarvis and King Street are. It was also home to the Great Fire of 1849, which destroyed most of the area. I believe that's the main entrance to George Brown right there. And just up ahead at Jarvis Street is where the transit priority corridor starts on King Street. So that runs in between Jarvis Street along to the west side of downtown to Bathurst Street. And what that means is that most cars are not able to go straight through each intersection. They'll have to turn off. So only emergency vehicles, transit vehicles, cyclists, and pedestrians can pass straight through each of these intersections. This is George Street, so it'll be one more block to the west from here where that starts. So we shouldn't be seeing any cars going straight through there. And I'll see if I can catch any of the somewhat confusing street signs, or at least confusing if you're a driver, as people always seem to go through those intersections anyways. There's been a lot of condo developments and loft conversions and that sort of thing in this area, which has led to there being a fairly high number of furniture stores. There was an EQ3, which we passed earlier. And if you see any buildings or anything that you think are particularly significant, or if I miss anything, point it out in the comments, because I always love to learn more about the city. I certainly don't even come close to knowing everything there is to know. And I will probably come back to this area armed with a bit more knowledge of some of these buildings, because I think that might make for a more interesting walk. Now I do know this building here, which is getting blasted by the sun right now, is the Daniel building, or the Daniel Brook building, built in the early 1800s. I'll cross the street and get a better look at it. This is Jarvis Street, so you can see the signs that say authorized vehicles and bicycles accepted. There's a look at the Daniel Brook building. And right there is the St. Lawrence Hall. Just behind there is the St. Lawrence Market, where they're constructing the new northern building for that. There's some kind of film shoot going on right there. And the St. Lawrence Market itself is just to the south of Front Street, directly behind here. St. Lawrence Hall was built in, or it opened in 1851 to serve gatherings and concerts, weddings, things like that. And it still serves most of those functions to this day. Not so much concerts, but banquets and weddings. It's named after, it was named after this area, which was the Lawrence Market, I believe this block of buildings was called. And most of this block here was ravaged by that fire in 1849. And that's what led to the construction of this new St. Lawrence Hall. You can take that alleyway down there to Front Street, and on the right will be Imagine Cinemas. And just to our right here is St. James Park, which has been under some pretty serious construction for quite a while. Certainly got a very nice garden area. There's a lot of different street furniture out in front. And this itself is St. James Cathedral, probably the city's most well-known church. Certainly its most photogenic and photographed for that matter. It too was built shortly after the Great Fire of 1849, as the church that originally stood on these grounds burnt down. You can tell by these signs it's a rather progressive church. And just up ahead is Church Street. And I'll try to get out of the sun in a second. I can see the glare. There it goes. There's a look north up Church Street that'll take you past Ryerson University and through the area known as the Church and Wellesley Village, up to just past Bloor Street, where it will actually curl around and meet up with Yonge Street. And just to the south here will be the St. Lawrence neighborhood, where you can find the Flatiron Building and Birksea Park. This building here is the Albany Club. It's a social club that was built in 1842. There's a few other similar kind of social clubs in the area. I would assume that's a place for the wealthier people to hang out and rub shoulders with one another. And from here we are entering the financial district. So that there on the left is the Omni King Edward Hotel. Originally built in 1903, but this 18-story addition went up about 20 years later. It was named after King Edward VII, who was the reigning king at the time. It's changed hands a number of times. I believe at one point it was even a Sheraton hotel property. It's currently run by the Omni Group. And I will definitely come back and do a walk through this street, Toronto Street. It's got some very interesting history to it, which admittedly I'm not super familiar with, not enough to go down there now and take a look. I have stayed at the King Edward Hotel before. Even though I lived in the city, my company was having, well, my ex-company was having people from Houston come up, and they were sort of encouraging us to spend a lot of time with them outside of office hours. So they arranged for the employees that lived in Toronto to have a room. And when I checked in, I was told that my room was not available and I was upgraded to a suite, which ended up being probably the nicest hotel room I've ever had. There's a look up Victoria Street. Just get another look at the King Edward. But one of the disappointments was the air conditioner was super loud and made a very loud rattle all night, and there wasn't much I could do about it. And there is a Alright, so I hope I don't have to do some clever editing to this. There was a topless lady just hanging out on the right there, and she clearly saw me with the camera, so I did my best to not film her. I think that's probably the most responsible action, although if you are out in public, it's fair game, right? People are allowed to record videos and take pictures and even publish that work. Your consent or permission isn't required. So if you don't want to draw attention to yourself, then don't draw attention to yourself, right? So this is Yonge Street, which is the main east-west divide in the city. Going back to the King Edward, I think some of the famous names to stay there include Margaret Thatcher, Elvis Presley, the Beatles at some point. Whenever the Toronto Film Festival's in town, there's always a number of other celebrities there. I'm sure I've probably missed about 1,000 famous people or so. But this is where King Street East ends and the financial district starts. I don't know why I started crossing the street there. I guess that person running baited me into it. There's a look north up Yonge Street. And it is 5:10, so this would normally be part of the rush hour here. But as you can see, it's really not that busy at all. So what I'm going to do is throw on my mask and head down into the subway and hop on a train. That tall white building there is First Canadian Place. where once upon a time I worked, well above the 50th floor. All right, let me just throw my mask on. So normally at this time, sorry if you can't hear me that well, this is a thicker cloth mask. But normally at this time, this station would be extremely busy to the point that the train would be pretty much full by the time everyone getting on here boards at it, or boards onto the train. Just fish out my Presto card. Head down towards the northbound train. Which sounds as if it might be here. All right, so I hope you enjoyed this walk of King Street East. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you on the next one.